replicate something? How do you scale it? How do you manage when you can no longer put your arms around it and see everybody who works for you in one day? And doing it little by little until we got big enough to do it in bigger chunks. And that was how I got involved. And I'm way over time, no doubt. So I'm going to pass this.
Do I need this mic? Can you hear me? Can you hear me all the way in the back? My name is Ted London. I'm a senior research fellow at the William Davidson Institute and on the faculty at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. And I came in a little late, so I'm picking up what I think the theme of the conversation is, which is to talk a little bit about our background and then kind of delve into the bigger idea of careers. So I'll keep my background piece really short, just to give you a sense of where it came from, and then talk a little bit about how I think about careers in the space and where the opportunities are. I did a keynote last weekend at a conference at Berkeley, and I started it this way, so I'll just repeat it. And I do believe it. I think this is our time. If you're interested in this field, this is our time. Things have changed immensely in the past couple of decades. I would say in the past 5 years, where it's not, can we do it? The questions aren't, can we run social enterprises and be able to venture? The questions is translating to how do we do it better? And I think it's really our time, and we're seeing more and more people interested in this. And this, and I'm talking about now the intersection of business and poverty, and the idea that they used to be seen as separate domains, where and there was always sort of trade-off that if we're going to run a business, we can't address social issues, and if we're going to address social issues, we can't run a business. And I think that's a false dichotomy, and it's slipping away, and there's a real opportunity now for all of us if we're interested in this. I think the future's pretty bright. There are some caveats to that, of course, so hold on. But what I will say, let me tell you my background, because I'm supposed to do that. So really quickly, I'm originally an engineer, and then which is a great training for problem solving. I worked for General Motors, pretty quickly decided I didn't want to be an engineer the rest of my life. Sorry if there are any engineers out there. I think it's a great field, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I got my MBA. I did what most MBAs did. I went into consulting. I was a senior consultant. Did a lot of cash flow, business valuation stuff. Again, great background, really interesting day to day. But when I looked at it, this isn't what I really want to do the rest of my life. So I went into Peace Corps. I went to Malawi and I spent 2 years co-running a regional small business development program. Wanted to stay in that field, but really interested also in environmental issues. Went to work, I was hired as a general manager to set up a spice factory for McCormick Spices, which is, I think, still the biggest spice company in the world, and it was in Padang, West Sumatra. So went to Indonesia and did that. Then I worked for a group called Conservation International, which is one of the major conservation groups, and I was the director of enterprise development. And this was early going, where the idea of business and environment was very early stage. Everyone thought it was a cool idea, except internally in Conservation International, they used to go, this is really great, not in my ecosystem. So even internally, we couldn't get it. But that's now transcended, and I think we're seeing that more. That's a pretty typical thing in the environmental world now, that we've got to think about the role of business in environmental protection. And then from there, I ran a nonprofit in D.C. that provided business and technical advisory services to local entrepreneurs, basically small and medium-scale businesses. And I had been in this field for a long time and was spending a lot of time working, if you will, kind of on the ground. And I was doing a lot of teaching along the way. And I said, you know what I'd really like to do? I want to spend more time thinking about things. And I think that, we're seeing this more and more. There are lots of people making the same mistakes over and over. And what we're not doing is we're not aggregating. And and there's also a false dichotomy of like practitioners, academics, things like that. I think you can be an action-oriented researcher. And what I'm really interested in doing, I got a PhD in strategy from the University of North Carolina, but with a real interest in thinking about the role of business strategy for poverty. And now that's where my work is centered, is really thinking about what have we learned, and how do we take this domain and move it forward. And I think there's a real opportunity to do that. And that's a subject of another talk about kind of what the opportunity is. The subject of this talk is that, and so I have one of my former great students, Shar, is here, tell me if I'm wrong, Shar, when I do this, but what I've always told students who come to me is, if you I believe, and this is what these guys have said too, so I don't disagree. I believe you got to do what you like, right? That you're going to do it better and you're going to enjoy it more. But it's often a harder journey because, you know, there are other issues. So with our students, I always say, put your hands like a funnel like this. And as long as you're generally in the right direction, you're doing good. What you don't want to do is take a job that's heading in the wrong direction. And in business school, there's a lot of pressure to be an investment banker or consulting. And I've had students that have, gone to McKinsey, which is like the gold standard. And they've got, what was I thinking? It's just not what I want to do. Now, part of going this way, maybe you got debt. So you got to. So I'm not saying this could be pretty big too. You may have a career objective here, but you got to take care of some debt. So if you're part of my strategy, I got to get rid of debt, have more flexibility, more power to it. You got to be realistic, but you got to go this way. And the big thing that I think people fail to understand is going this way. It requires as much skill as being an engineer or something else. And someone's saying, I got a cool idea, I want to do it. It just doesn't cut it. You need to have a skill set. You can be persistent and maybe get lucky, but you got to build your skill set. And if you don't know the field, you can't expect to get hired at a high-level position. Just because you're interested, you got a cool idea. If you haven't worked overseas, if you don't understand the domain, if you don't have the right skill set, most people aren't going to be particularly interested. No big surprise, right? So you got to pay your dues. And that's, I've had students that, just kind of anecdotally, one of my students was, this is what you wanted to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay focused on this. And we talk occasionally. It's like, I can't get a high-paying job, but this is what I want to do. And then finally, this volunteer position came up in an East African country. And she said, I'm going to take it because they keep saying I need this experience. I'm going to have to suck it up and do it. And lo and behold, about 6 months later, they offered her a full-time job. I don't exactly know what she's getting paid, but she's happy with the pay. But she was willing to pay her dues. And I find that the challenge for a lot of people